One race from the same place that make the same grip on the same ship. So we must push one common intention. It's for a better life in the region. For we woman and we children. That must be the ambition of the Caribbean and the Caribbean and the Caribbean.
And welcome to today's edition of Politics 101, our open word edition tonight on a Monday night. Professor Clive Thomas is going to be here. We're going to be talking about issues that are currently in the news, especially as they have to do with our economy. Welcome to all of you to Politics 101. The weekend after big Thanksgiving in the United States of America. I know quite a few of you join us from there. And yes, we were off on Thursday and Friday as I was off visiting family. And, you know, when you're a political activist and you're running on your own, you get to make those decisions on your own. And once you get together with family, they take the opportunity of making those decisions for you. So my my siblings informed me no Politics 101 on Thursday and Friday. This is family time. I don't know that they are Thanksgiving people, but certainly use the opportunity for family to get together. And I come from a family of 9. So it's a pretty large family, and I don't get to hang out with all of them in the same place and don't talk about the nieces and nephews, the next generation. So yeah. So we were off on Thursday and Friday, but we're back tonight. My apologies to Mark Benshaw because he called, I think it was on Saturday or Sunday night. Saturday night, I think. And I just just sat down with my sisters they wanted me to look at a movie or something, and Mark called. I had to say, no, catch me another time, and so on. But yes, I mean, at the end of the day, you have to spend some time with family, and as political people, we don't do enough of that, and we spend our lives in public service, and then at some point, the family insists, look, this is family time. So my apologies on their behalf, but we are back tonight. Welcome to all of you, those of you who are there in the United States. Happy Thanksgiving. And guess what? I got so many texts from Guyanese who are wishing me happy Thanksgiving. We've become such a global world now that all these things that are supposed to be American, they've now become global thanks to social media, and even before social media, the conventional media, the television, and all of those. I'm not a big Thanksgiving person, like I said, and I don't think my family is. But of course, West Indians, we use the occasion as an opportunity to get together with family. Well, we hope that you had a good 2 or 3 days. That whole story of what they call it, Black Friday. Thank God it's passed on, so people don't have to get up and go in line and that cold early to get all those doorbusters. That's gone now. Everything is being done online, and I always found that part of the Thanksgiving story to be so oppressive, with people having to stand in those lines. But that's gone now. The shopping continues. We are never going to get rid of the commercialism because that's the way of the world. I was about to say in the old days we'd say that's the way of the capitalist world. But there is a way in which capitalism or aspects of what we used to call capitalism has now become so normative that one cannot make that distinction. Good evening to all of you in Guyana. Thank you all so very much for tuning in to Politics 101. And thanks for all of you who have expressed your gratitude for what we do. And we say we couldn't and we can't do it without you. I got some emails and inboxes from those of you who saw the WPA press release last week, I think, yes, and urging us to speak out more often on these issues. Thanks for recognizing that. It is not that we don't speak out often, but would you believe it? It was the first time in a long time that all of the media, or most of them, carried the WPA's press release. You know, they treat us sometimes as the pariah of Guyanese politics. This has always been so, and you know that it comes with the turf. But it was good to see much of the media carried the press release, and thanks to you all for recognizing that and drawing it to our attention. And we will speak out more in that part of the media. As you know, we are on here every day. We are on in the mornings with Brother Kedaki, and we do let our views be heard. But I do agree with you that we should continue to press the conventional media to carry more of our views. Thank you all very much. Professor Thomas is going to weigh in tonight on some of those issues raised in the press release on Venezuela. And we're also going to be making the link between what's happening out there in the Palestine, in Gaza, and what's happening in Guyana. Lots happening in Guyana. Did you all see? Of course you see. Of course you saw. Jack Dio calling Kathy Hughes a low life. And of course I read in the media this morning that Hughes is taking him to court. Good. That chap is out of order. He's out of order. And we're going to talk more about that in a subsequent program. But I want to say one thing now. And that is, you see, he calls Rickford Burke a lowlife every day. And other people like Rickford Burke. And we allow him to get away with it. And now he's calling somebody in what we may call the middle class of the society, respectable people in the society. And then it's only then that we are realizing this man is out of order. You see, when he calls people like Rickford Burke and Mark Benchop, and sometimes he throws in people like myself there, when he calls us like, we should be indignant immediately. Because if he gets through in calling some of us low life, eventually he's going to call all of us low life. And we know what that means in Guyana. Kathy Hughes is going to court. And she is right. And I am glad that the society is waking up to where this man is taking our political discourse. I don't like to spend too much of time on Jack Dio because Jack Dio is Jack Dio. And I believe I come from a political tradition that said the person is a reflection of the political socialization, the political environment. And so I don't spend too much of time on the individual. But clearly this man has located himself at the center of everything that is negative about our politics and our society today. So there's that. I noticed Randy Prasad has replied to the WPA. Remember in that press release, we said that the government should consider a referendum. Well, they've replied through Randy Prasad that we don't need a referendum in Guyana and Venezuela. Well, we know it is not that they think that a referendum is a bad thing. We've gotten lots of feedback on it. But it's because it's coming from the opposition. It's coming from the opposition. God bless them. God bless them. So we have that going on. And then, of course, in the WPA press release, we did say that while we take the conventional wisdom that it is the internal situation in Venezuela that is pushing their aggressive rhetoric and attitude and action to Guyana on the border issue that we in the WPA believe it had to do with our oil and gas. And we had said weeks ago, probably months ago, that auction, that public auction that we had something to do with it. Nobody paid any attention to us as usual, crazy people. And now the Venezuelan government itself is pointing to that auction as one of the reasons. Now, we don't know it to be the gospel truth, but that's what they are saying. And it's not crazy for them to say that. And of course, they're pointing to the fact that our government is taking hell on the oil and gas industry from its own people. Remember we talked about government legitimacy, and we made the point that this government does not enjoy legitimacy. And a lot of the chickens are coming home to roost because there are all kinds of rumblers in the society about who is on the Venezuela thing and who's not on the Venezuela thing, who's supporting it, and all of that stuff. There are rumblings in the society. The opposition said that the government is now going around the country on these public things in Venezuela, and it is not including the government. Sorry, the opposition. We understand some opposition MPs were slated to speak in schools, invited by the Parent Teachers Association, invited by the head teachers, and the government stopped them. The PPP is playing politics with everything. Everything. All right, I think we are all ready now, and we are going to get going with Professor Clive Thomas. Professor Thomas, good evening.
Good evening, David.
And it's good to have you back again.
Yes, I hope you had a good Thanksgiving.
Yes. It was good to catch up with family. And as I was saying in the introduction, people like us who have dedicated our lives to this politics and the struggle, and we do so not only in our political activism, but even at the level of our scholarship, we become so consumed that we don't spend enough time with family. And then when we get together with them, they remind us, you have family too. I'm sure you would have gone through those experiences.
Yes, but on my family page, there's a strong tradition that believes Thanksgiving goes back to the sale of black slaves. And that is what they're thanking us for. So we have a very committed political posture on it.
Yes. I, as I said, my family are not Thanksgiving people too for political reasons, but they use the occasion for family to get together.
Family, to get together.
And all of that kind of stuff.
But that reminder comes from all the generations.
Yes.
And I was very happy to see that. From my siblings, my brothers and sisters, as well as their children and grandchildren.
Yes.
Strongly of the view that it's an indirect celebration of the sailor slaves, the blacks. That's all. In fact, there were many posters that they photographed with that writing and printed over the years. So that's a strong tradition in the United States too.
Yes. One of the good things for me on the days that I spent there was to see the younger people in my family, my nieces and nephews, the next generation, to be even more strongly political than I am. They are very much into the nuances of American
the culture,
and global politics, and holding their own. I mean, one of my sisters was pointing out to me that I was one of the more silent contributors to the discussion. The young people are really taking the political discourse to another level, and it was heartening really to see that they have become. And it belies the view that some of us have that young people are not engaged, you know.
My family was involved in the circulation of that discussion about the low life.
Uh-huh.
I think they were deeply involved in the preparation of it.
Yes, yes. And Professor, let's start there. We didn't intend to start there, but it's now there. There is what is, you know, well, so what? Jack, you called somebody
What is important, you know, David,
go
I
ahead.
think
Yes.
the real threat that represents is that it's forcing us to normalize a pattern of behavior, which I think is so fundamentally anti-diversity, anti-supportive of women in the society, disrespectful of children in the younger generation, even disrespectful of elders, that we should not allow it to continue. I think that is more than just Jack Dio. He wants to normalize a pattern of politics that I think we should not accept. And when we talk against it, we should talk about it in that name. It's not only that he's vulgar, it is not only that he's breaking the law by maligning people, but he's also trying to normalize a pattern of behavior which I don't think belongs in a society like Ghana. We treat people differently. And I think he should be rebuked on those grounds. I feel very strongly that we should not allow it to continue. And that is a threat that we face. You see, the arrogance of oil and power and petrostate allows these guys to believe they can control everything. They want to control the dialogue and the way in which we present it to the public. We should not let them get away with it. So I see the fight against that type of behavior as being almost a fundamental fight as well. Because the fight for style of politics that should not allow to continue. Because it will in the end not help people who are being fruitful and are being responsible to the people who are being deprived in this society.
Professor Clive Thomas starting off here tonight with that very strong statement on Jack Dio's name calling, in this instance, Kathy.
Maligning women.
Maligning women and putting it in its broader perspective and why we should stop it now. We should not allow it to continue.
Be normalized.
Yeah, yeah.
And he has to know that people reject it on fundamental social and cultural grounds. Unless he knows it, he won't know the price he's putting guys to pay for this type of behavior.
Professor, thank you so much, and we'll make sure that this your comments here be circulated far and wide, because I think it points to the real seriousness of this development by Mr. Jack Dio. I want to go straight to the WPA press release, and I said in my introduction that I got a lot of responses from people who were glad to hear us speak, certainly in the traditional media, and the press statement was widely circulated. One of the things we said in that statement was that while we do not disagree that the internal political situation in Venezuela, vis-a-vis the weakness of the Maduro government, would have contributed to their recent aggression to Guyana, we think that in the final analysis, at the base of it, it has to do with oil. And recent developments coming out of Venezuela, recent statements by Maduro, seems to point in that direction. Comment?
Yes, I think that that observation was probably one of the motives why I try to encourage the party to put out the statement. I think it's important for us to recognize that this situation with Venezuela is an ongoing situation. The threats and the opportunities for dealing with it will be there all the time. We have to be careful in every move we make, especially over the areas that are controlled by us that have Venezuela challenging, that we act in a responsible way that does not give them an opportunity to make inroads into our strong historical position. That was one of the reasons why I also suggested that we should have a referendum, a call for a referendum, because the intent there is not to just counter with a referendum, but is to minimize, to ritualize the role of referenda in situations like that. That trivializes it if we have a referendum and they have one too, in a way which we can't by just cussing the referendum. If everybody have a referendum, then nobody has any particular merit to claim in the terms of the dispute about the importance of referenda. So in that sense, I think that the government is not showing enough creativity. It is still trying to maneuver politically to advance its position in the population. And at the same time, it appears as if it's advancing the cause of Guyana as a whole. There are very, very strong tendencies I've noticed in some of the emails that I've been receiving of persons who are actually challenging whether they should be involved in any defense of what's happening on the border or in with the Essequibo challenge when they're not benefiting from being a full citizen by any way in which the ruling party is acting and behaving. That would be a most disastrous development for Guyana because it opens the way for Venezuela to persist with the claims that Maduro is making and the statements that are circulating now, that even the people of Guyana reject the government of Guyana, the politicians. He's not saying just one politician, he's saying all the politicians in Guyana, letting alone the people because they all allow the Americans to run away with their oil wealth. And they're hiding behind all sorts of fancy defenses to allow that process to continue. And he doesn't see why Venezuela should stand there and allow this to happen to what they consider to be their territory. These are insidious developments which seek to sow more discord among our people than it does among their people because it's a solidifying element for them. So our government needs to know that it can't play politics all the time. It can't try to have a Venezuelan crisis on the one hand challenging its legitimacy, at the same time trying to advance the interests of the PPP and not the interests of Guyana. That is why I think that we should recognize that this is an important part of the struggle for the development of Guyana and constitute, I think, the single biggest threat to the benefits that we can get from that oil discovery. In fact, in my columns that I've been writing over the years, going back to 2016, I've kept insisting that one of the most important existential threats to what we have and the potentiality that is there for us is the case of Venezuela. It never disappears from the forefront. It may not be an imminent threat, but until it is settled by some ruling by the ICJ, it will continue to be an existential threat. Much the same way as other disasters, one other disaster can be an existential threat, and that is a major environmental catastrophe off the coast. So we have those two things hanging over our heads. The government has to act in a way in which it doesn't try to conflate the two. Because now in trying to, after they've started the auction, they start to raise questions, obviously in Venezuela's mind. What are they trying to do? Are they really legitimately trying to find the best oil producers to protect their and exploit the production of oil in Guyana? for the economic benefit of Guyanese, or are they trying to create allies indirectly by widening the coverage of the states that are tied to the Guyana enterprise, or the economic interests that are tied to the Guyana enterprise? What is their motive? And that uncertainty is bound to create incentives for adventure. And we have to take those sort of considerations into mind. Because once there's an incentive for adventure, they're going to pursue it because they have no real strong legal case. So that is why I don't think that is just a trivial matter, it's a very important matter. And we need in pursuing it the guidance of all the talents in Guyana, not just the PPP looking after its own interests. Because you can see from the way in which Jagdo, who is responsible for this, is behaving, these interests are summed up in calling people low life.
Professor
Low
Clive
life.
Thomas. Professor Clive Thomas here. Professor, you've said a mouthful there. And I want you to go back to the question of legitimacy of the government and how that plays in to this Venezuelan issue, because it's something that I don't think we have taken very seriously. That, in effect, the Venezuelan government is pointing to the lack of legitimacy in Guyana as one of the reasons that their case is strong.
Of course, they will do that. And I think once questions are there, and that lack of legitimacy comes from the feeling that the government is not being forthcoming and balanced in its participation and allowing to contribute to the development of the country, of all races, all classes, all political interests. There's that strong feel of sectarian government determined to rule, but fearful that it may end up being deemed a racial enterprise, and on that score alone, determined to exhibit ruthless control over population, local population statements. That seems to be the enterprise that they're driving. And that enterprise, like the behavior with the visiting team, it's almost hysterical for a government in power with all those votes you said you have. We reacted to a team that is visiting that has no real authority or power to make any decisions over Guyana's future. But it's so fearful of it. I think that is because deep at heart, they recognize that they are vulnerable to the criticism of what they are actually doing. And they don't want that to be brought to the surface.
Professor Clive Thomas here. Professor, I think you put it so well there that here was a team that came that didn't have any authority to do anything to the Guyana state, but yet the government is behaving in such a hysterical way. The opposition has pointed to the fact that the government has begun these consultations, as they say, around the country. And they're not including the political opposition. In fact, there are reports that a couple of parliamentarians from the opposition side were slated to speak in schools, invited by the schools, and then disinvited by the ministry. I know Tabitha Sarabo, one of them, and another opposition parliamentarian. What's your views on that?
I think it's disappointing, shocking. I cannot imagine a moment of supposedly national crisis a government would behave in that way. It has no foresight. It obviously doesn't think beyond its nose. And there are no gray cells in their heads. That's the worst thing you can do. Try to silence the contribution of patriots to the defense of Guyana. But you want to make this into, you think you're more patriotic to Guyana than some of us? What have you given up? They stole so much from the country. That's what they see the country as a source of benefit for themselves. They have no national interest in building a civilization here. It's really disgusting that these people can now be telling people that they can participate in generating some defense to national honor. At this point in time, I think it's crazy, crazy, crazy madness. I'm sorry I sound so emotional about
No,
it,
no, 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 no,
but I'm
Professor.
really struck by the
I really
absolute
do. Yes.
insensitivity of the people who are running the country, that they cannot see a moment when they need to go beyond their reflexes.
Professor, as an economist, you have spent your entire life on this question of social equality via the economy, especially when it comes to distribution of resources. You've spent a lot of time on things like wages and salaries to workers. Part of your activism has been as a trade unionist. You were president of the University of Guyana's union. You were a member of the TUC. You still advise some of the unions today. So you've been very much part of this thing. And now we are hearing that there are categories of Guyanese who are, as you said in your earlier statement, categories of Guyanese who are questioning whether they should be in the forefront of defending this country against Venezuelans' aggression when they are not getting an equitable share of the wealth and the resources in Guyana. You and the WPA have said that alleviation of poverty is one of the ways in which we can demonstrate our commitment to an equitable and equal distribution of the resources with the suggestion of cash transfers, a universal basic income. Nobody could have said 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that there was going to be a linkage between a democratization of the distribution of wealth and the defense of our territorial integrity. But here it is that it might be staring us in
the
face.
face. Yeah.
Please comment on that for us, Professor.
Well, to my mind, it was obvious. It wasn't an accident that made me make that suggestion, because I still think the biggest and the most urgent problem that we have to overcome in Guyana is persistent poverty. That's the crucial developmental problem. Once we get people out of poverty and all the deprivations that come with poverty, we open up their vision, their capacities, their willingness to contribute to a better future. They become better voters, better participants in the political process. Almost, I won't want to say overnight, but in a pretty short period of time. And that is the aim behind these recommendations. But the government tries to do everything to short circuit that insofar as it does not support the government. And that is the tragedy that we are facing with. We've kept silent for too long and allowing this to drift. This is a situation now where parts of the behavior are trying to be normalized that are inconsistent with the Guyana of the future. We have to challenge it. And I think that I'm glad that this program took place, because I didn't want to urge on you, but I really felt that it isn't different from the other program that we were having on the oil and gas, because it really has to do with that. The vision that I'm saying that creates us with an opportunity for investing in and being able to advance the society to a level that we never thought would ever be possible. It's certainly in our lifetimes. So that is why I think that the discussion today is not a diversion from what we've been discussing, but trying to show the broader interactions on which what we were saying represents.
Professor Clive Thomas here, and in case you all are just joining us, it's our Monday night edition of Politics 101 Open Word. We are talking today about Venezuela, and shortly we will hop across to the Middle East and talk about the relevance of what's happening there to our Guyana. We also opened the program by referring to Mr. Jack Dio's name calling Cathy Hughes and others low life, and we weighed in on that. The linkage between the politics, the economics, international relations, that's what we're discussing tonight on Politics 101, our open word edition. Professor, the war is raging in the Middle East. And some will say that is far away from us, that a country like Guyana has no business in big country politics, that we should stay out of that. The WPA and yourself, we have a different view. We feel that there is much relevance to what is happening there in the Palestine and what's happening in our Guyana. Please expand for us.
But I think we had mentioned it briefly before. I think for a start, we have to recall that historically, the Palestinian problem might have been a Guyana problem, a British Guyana problem at the time, because the imperial powers were determined to give the Israelis, it wouldn't have been Israel then, the Jews, a place for settlement and occupation outside of the European continent. And they at one time even thought of placing them here on the northern coast of South America, which would have involved Guyana. So I've always felt that we had a historical linkage to what is happening in Palestine and therefore the rest of the Caribbean. So I don't think this is something alien to the Caribbean. We also have gone for a history of colonization, a history of foreign settlement and occupation of the territories. And we know from our experiences and from international law now that the occupier has no rights to claim self-defense when they are involved in an illegal occupation of a territory. When it's not their territory, but they have the right and the power, only the military and economic and other capable powers to dominate the territory. So even though people are talking about the excesses of the Hamas intervention on October the 7th, I think that legally, no occupier has a right to claim a defense, self-defense, and to claim that the occupied has no right of violence against the occupier. International law does not allow that. No occupying power can preclude the people who are there occupying the territory they're controlling that does not belong to them from rebelling against their occupation. So that's the fundamental principle in which I act. And the response of the Israeli government to its excesses to the actions of the Hamas group has been excessive beyond anything that you could imagine. A level of vengeance that I think I've never witnessed in my entire life. And reminded me that people, when they first colonized these areas in the Caribbean and South America, used to throw babies, the colonizers, throw babies in boiling oil. They're coming out to pretend as if this is something new. That's what the indigenous Aboriginal inhabitants of the region experienced. That was fun for the pirates. See which one will last longer, which one will stop crying first. I mean, and this really upsets me, and I think that the brutality that I've seen that has been happening since, I think every guy needs to be revolted against it. And I strongly feel the government does not need urging. I'm shocked that in their own accord, with all this pretense to radicalism, they could not take steps to make even a single action of putting out a statement condemning Israel and breaking relations with Israel as a foundational element of their external relations with Israel, particularly as they are likely to be involved in the Security Council at some point in time in the near future. I was disappointed that happened. I was very pleased that at least Belize would made a statement,
Yes, Belize.
which I think I sent to you.
Yes.
And of all the powers, they probably made it because they are suffering for territorial claims as well,
That's
like
right.
that. So my feeling is that the occupier has no legal defense against actions by the occupied. They have no rights to disproportionate reactions against the people who they are occupying. You know that in the prisons there, they can create laws after they arrest people for arresting them. That was happening to the Palestinians,
Mm-hmm.
whether in the West Gaza or the West Bank, wherever it is, all the time. So the crime that the occupier, the occupier sees as being committed in that region is to be part of the occupied. Just be a citizen that you can call an occupied citizen. That alone is enough. You don't have no laws to follow. They can make up laws as they go. It's 20 years of your life if it was stolen. This is ridiculous, and this is a modern world. And people, tell me some things about glowing things about what they've been to Israel and see how the kibbutz so beautiful and all that sort of stuff. Not recognizing the foundations on which it rests. The settlers are claiming the lands of the Palestinians every day, fighting them, the police and the army supporting them, the settlers against the Palestinians. This is like a humongous human outrage. And to think that I live in a country where, after all we went through slavery, there isn't even a whimper against these abuses.
Professor
That,
Clive
that
Thomas,
is what upsets me.
yes, speaking on the situation in the Palestine, the ongoing war between the Israel state and the Hamas group, by extension, the atrocities on the people of the Palestine. One could say it's a war against the people
But
of
it can't be a war. The one side has planes, have navy, have
yes,
all sorts of stuff. The other side doesn't even have a single helicopter, a single fishing boat.
right, right.
Then what sort of war that is?
Hmm.
Not a war among equals. One power is supposed to be the 18th most powerful in the world. That's Israel. One army against a bunch of persons who have to smuggle in arms to fight against the occupying power. If I know if I was living in Israel, I'd be living in Palestine, or if Ghana had been the equivalent of Palestine, we would have been in there. They would we miss a lifetime,
That's right.
horror.
Yes, 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 yes. Professor, let's come back for a minute to the Venezuelan issue. How in the immediate future, how do you see us going forward?
A lot will depend on the Venezuelan action in this period. But we really can't make a decision on how to go forward, except for preparing the nation for it until the court gives a ruling. So I think between now and then, we are caught in a bind where we have to mobilize our people. And that is why I'm so concerned that the government seems to think mobilization is propagandizing for the PPP. I have lost you, David.
Professor Clive Thomas here. We lost contact there for a little bit. Professor weighing in there on how we proceed with the Venezuelan issue and the WPA perspective on it. And we are going to be paying close attention to the developments here in Guyana and the government attitude, because as Professor says, the government seems to be more interested in its own political survival rather than the survival of the country. I want to thank you all so much for tuning in to yet another edition of Politics 101. And I'll see you all tomorrow. Yes, I'll see you all tomorrow. And